Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining me today. This is the Catholic Bible Daily Reflections podcast, and this is episode number 11, Daily Reflection number 11. My name is Caroline, and today we are talking about Genesis chapters 22, 23, and 24 in the Catholic Bible. And we're taking a look at those chapters and looking at a perspective of today's time. So with that, we start off in chapter 22, where God gives Isaac the command to sacrifice his son Isaac. So we left off in the prior chapters. This long-awaited promise has now been fulfilled. And it took years to get to this point. And imagine what was going through the mind of Abraham. This was his son, his only son. And now God is asking for something that seems strange, right? Why would God ask me to kill my son, my only son, the son that you promised me, right? So Abraham must have been going through this in his mind and thinking through these things, right? He knows this is God. He knows that God can do all things. God has come through. He has been faithful. He has given me this promised son. And he knows that God is all powerful. And he thought in his mind, from what we see in later chapters, I think it's in the New Testament, where one of the apostles has spoken about, I think it's in Hebrews actually, where it talks about how Abraham, thinking through his righteousness, that God could even resurrect a dead person, that he would, if he was going to sacrifice his son for God, that God could later resurrect him. So, Abraham was very wise. He was very obedient. He was very faithful to God. And so he takes Isaac to the mountain to get the sacrifice ready, and he goes through all the steps, and then at the very last second, God's angel steps in and says, Abraham, do not harm your son. And God says through his angel, I know now that you would even sacrifice your own son. You have given, you follow me, you obey me to the point of even giving me the thing that you treasure the most. And it is a test of his faithfulness. It's a test of his obedience. And so comparing that to today's time, if you have gone through seasons with God, like a wilderness season, a season of separation and wilderness, a season of preparation. There are many people that have gone through these. If you have prayed to God for something and God has answered you with a not yet, you know it's coming. And you go through a period of testing, spiritual warfare. There are a lot of things that can be very confusing to you. I have gone through that. I'm going through that. So there is testing of you. And sometimes during that period, things may become very confusing, and God will ask you to do things that don't make sense. Now, I've had guidance from others so that I could understand the wilderness season, but Abraham is the first here. He is the first being tested, I believe, because we're still in Genesis and we are in a period of time where I believe Abraham is the first that has gone through this period. And God is asking Abraham to do something that doesn't make sense, right? God doesn't tell you the reasons why. He just gives a command. He asks you to do something, and you then need to decide, am I going to trust God? It's like, when you do those, I think it's like employment type of retreats where they say, fall backwards and someone will catch you, you have to trust that there is someone back there that's going to catch you. Now, in this context, it's God, right? You have to fall backwards and trust that God is there to catch you. Right. And that's what Abraham is doing today. And so in my own season, my own wilderness season, this is how I know it, because there were some things that were a little confusing to me, like it didn't make sense for me to do them. And I had to trust that God had a reason, God had a purpose in that testing. And so I did it. And I kept on, right? And it was my trust in God. It's like a leap of faith when you do this. And Abraham had to have a leap of faith with God. He said, even if I sacrifice my son and God's asking me to do this, that God could perhaps resurrect him or, do something else. And God did stop him just before he killed his son. And God says, I know now that you would not, hold anything away from me, even your most treasured son. So he passed this test. And so, and this is so like today, like I said, if you've been in a season with God, if you expect to pray to God for something, you will be tested. Your trust will have to increase, and you will need to put your faith and trust in God. So, we see also that Sarah dies in chapter 23. And so Sarah dies before Abraham, and Abraham goes and he buries her. And then we see in chapter 24, the marriage of his son Isaac. His son is now an adult, and Isaac will marry Rebekah. And we come again in this chapter to the inter-family marriages, right? This becomes important later in Exodus because in the tradition, you would look to marry someone from within your distant family, an uncle's daughter, a grandfather's son and daughter. You would be looking for inter-family marriage, and that is because at the time of Abraham, they are living as aliens in a land that is not their own. And these are people all around them that are not, the believers in God. They're not the believers in this, this faith. They don't have faith in God. They don't know God. We're seeing these varying lines, right? These descendants that are descendants of Canaan, right? Canaan, Ham, Noah, right? That's the more, I wouldn't say fully evil line. I mean, it is an evil line, but they're more paganistic. They are not in the line that is under this covenant, Abraham's line, right? Noah, Shem, into Abraham. And so we see that they're living in this land of Canaan as aliens. It's not their own land. And these cultures around them are paganistic. They don't believe in God, the one true God, right? They have many gods, maybe. They do things like child sacrifice. There's wickedness, there's violence. And this is the time that Abraham is living in. And so the tradition amongst descendants of Abraham was to marry within their families. And so Abraham sends his servant to his family, his brother, who has a daughter. And well, they don't know that at that point. They are being sent. This servant is being sent to see if there are any daughters that can marry his son Isaac, so they can have this interfamily marriage. And so the servant goes to Abraham's brother. He happens to have a daughter, Rebecca. The servant, puts a kind of a test with God, and says, God, if this is the, whoever this woman is going to be, let her do these things, right? And it was to feed the camels and water the camels, and and so she does these things, and so he knows this is the one that God has sort of set aside for Isaac. Rebecca, her name is Rebecca. She agrees to marry Isaac, and they leave to go back to the homeland so that Isaac can then marry Rebecca. And I say that this is important in later chapters in the Bible because in Exodus, God warns the Israelites. If you live amongst the people of Canaan, if you do not get rid of them completely, right? He gives them commands. He says, wherever you go and wherever I send you, you are going to take that land. And that means take it by force. And you will fight and you must kill everyone. You must get rid of everything, because don't take their idols, don't take their women, don't take, their gods. If you don't get rid of everything when you go to fight for this land, you will start to mingle. If you marry their women, for example, the men, Israelite men, if you marry their women, you will most likely be led astray from the one true God. You will start to compromise your faith. And so God forewarns them in Exodus. Once he brings them just before they're about to go into the promised land, he gives them, there's an entire, several words from God. God says, I'm warning you today. God obviously can see past, present, and future. So he knows what's going to happen. And so he's forewarning them. He's saying, do not intermarry with the land of Canaan, the people there. Don't live with them. Don't live among them. And so we'll see in Exodus, and then in further, future chapters, we're going to see where they don't get rid of all of the people. They start to live amongst them, and then they start to intermarry amongst them. And then all the trouble starts for them. They lose their promise. They lose the covenant. They are then exiled. So we're going to see this in future chapters. And even today, it's a scattered people, the Israelites. And so, today's time, there's many that say that the Israelites have lost the covenant. They are no longer God's chosen people. But this covenant with God was from the very beginning, and it is a life covenant. It is a forever covenant. God's faithful. So while it may seem like today's times, this will not ever happen, this covenant, there will be a new people with other nations and tribes, and all being God's people. We're adopted children of Abraham and Sarah. So through Jesus Christ, all people will come to believe in him. If you believe all the way through to Revelation, right? All people will come to believe in Jesus Christ, and he will have a second coming, and he will, there'll be the day of judgment from God. There will be, a new people, right? And that includes the Israelite people, the remnant of people, right? The remnant of Israel. But we're going back, we're here in Genesis again, right? And we're just seeing that the interfamily marriage becomes important as we continue through the Bible. And so, that's what we're covering, obviously, in today's chapters here. We see the promise, the testing, the testing that doesn't make sense. We see the death of Sarah, and now Abraham is looking to get his son married off so that the descendants can continue. Very important material and information in this chapter. It's very interesting reading. I love to be able to talk about it with you and to sort of bring us from, we're in Genesis, but bring you all the way through to today's time and give you some comparisons and some examples and, help you better understand, especially if you're going through anything right now in your life, right? I talk about testing with God. If you've prayed to God for anything and you're undergoing testing and, you're undergoing a difficult season with God, you're not alone. You are amongst other people that are going through it, have gone through it, and will go through it. We're all building a relationship with God. And so I'm happy to talk about these chapters here today with you. Please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, give me feedback. If there's anything that you'd like to see in these podcasts, comments as to what you may be going through. if you're going through a difficult season, I told you I'm going through a season with God, and I know I'm not alone. I know other people are going through this. So feel free to comment, share your thoughts. And I look forward to our next podcast episode, episode number 12. We're going to continue on with the book of Genesis.